Thank you. Greetings, everybody. Hello, everybody, all right? My name's Dr. Martin Glynn, a.k.a. Doc Martin, a.k.a. Dad. You heard all that noise before I started. I paid them, because I know if I'm not very good, at least I know I've had some kind of euphoric expression before we start. It's a real privilege to be here, and kind of feeling nervous right now because I've felt the impact of all the speakers that have gone. I just want to explain before we start what the word generativity means, because I've spoken to quite a lot of the younger generation outside who've been talking to me. Generativity just means passing it on to the next generation. And in some respects, that's what my talk's about. So, I'm 60. I turned 60 in July. What does that mean? It means that I kind of get more pleasure out of watching crap TV. I get more pleasure out of doing mundane things like looking foxes out in my back garden. I become a great-grandfather. And the strangest thing is, I wasn't prepared to be a great-grandfather. And what I realize is legacy, passing it on. And so, at the age of 60, I got a PhD, worldwide reputation, written the books, did everything my mum wanted me to be. I wanted to change the world. I was very idealistic. I felt when I got a PhD, I'm going to be like Usain Bolt, change the world. I remember when I went to my examiner and said, I'm doing a PhD. I'm going to change the world. He said, only 3 people are going to read it. Gutted. But I got my own back. I went to Routledge and they gave me the book deal, so thousands of people read it. But yesterday I was really clever. Always clever. But today, I decided it's time to change myself. And what this is about, and welcome, I'm going to take you on a little journey. I want you to walk with me. 2 years ago, I got diagnosed with an enlarged prostate. And the first thing that happened when I was told, I did the typical man. Any men in the room know when you get a splinter, you think you're going to have your arm off. Well, I remember with me when I told I got an enlarged prostate, I thought I was going to die. And I said to the doctor, doctor, I'm going to die. I'm frightened of it. He goes, we're dying every day. So I said, why am I frightened of it then? He says, because you're aware of it. So suddenly, I stopped hearing. I was given so much advice about if you die and take this and take that. Nah. I couldn't see. I wouldn't look at myself in the mirror. Although the prostate is round where my bottom is, but I still couldn't look at myself in the mirror because I thought something was wrong with me. I'd forgotten about my intelligence. I'd forgotten about stuff like that. But internally, I was screaming. So what happened is I started treading water. What does that mean? It meant that you'd see me functioning externally. I'm outside, big Doc Martin, big personality, laughing, joking. But I remember when I was at school treading water, you're at the top, it looks like you're floating, but underneath you're flapping. And I was flapping. So I was treading water. But if you look at that picture, it looks like you're drowning. And I was drowning. I was drowning in self-pity, fear. I started to get frightened of everything. You know, I felt like one of those people on a plane. You ever experience turbulence and you're sitting next to someone and you feel you want to admit stuff to them because you think you're going to die. And then the plane goes, and then you go, no, I'm only lying. You know what I mean? So I was treading water. And that's me. I started to tell myself, I'm going to die. What am I going to do? I was panicking. So I had to do some reflection. Now, I don't know about you, but my reflection takes place in the bath. I'm one of those people who likes to have baths that burns the skin off your bottom. Hot water, listening to Miles Davis. That's my way of reflecting. I had to reflect. Who am I? What am I? Why am I doing here? I've done everything society asks, everything my mum asks, but somehow, in the reflection, it didn't feel right. I didn't feel comfortable. Because I felt I'd done what society asked, but I hadn't asked myself, what did I want? What did I need to do? Because I thought, now I've got a prostate issue, everything's changed. So I went, status and profile, go for a professorship, get another book deal, raise my profile, community. Because you see, I grew up in a place called St. Anne's in Nottingham, very poor, grew up in a slum. And I remember my PhD was working with dangerous men. So it was offenders that gave me my PhD. So I suddenly realized everything that I had and have came from the community, but I gained a status and a profile. And I had to make a decision. But in order to make the decision, I needed to break free. And breaking free means I needed to break free of habits, break free of being negative, breaking free of so many different things, but I needed to break free. And I've studied slavery. And one of the things I know, that slavery was not just a case of coming off the plantation. Slavery was about changing your mentality, that you're more than being a slave. And I was a slave to everything. I was a slave to fear. I was a slave to anxiety. I was a slave to lost ambition. I was just a slave. But like most slaves, you have to break the chains. So I had to separate myself. And part of that separation from myself meant that I had to take a good look in the mirror. There's a great book, Portrait of Dorian Gray. And in the book, a person sells his soul to the devil, and he stays young, but the picture ages. And I realized, as a friend said to me the other day, I got the body of a 60-year-old, but the mind of a 12-year-old. And a bit like the Portrait of Dorian Gray, I am aging, but I wouldn't accept it. So in the separation, first thing I had to do in my separation is stop blaming. I blamed everything. I blamed white people, I blamed university, I blamed everything. But I never really took responsibility, because what I realized is I had choices. A good friend of mine always tells me you got choices. So the first thing I had to do in separation is stop the blame game. Stop blaming everything. I had to be humble. Let me tell you, you know when you've got a prostate problem, trust me, it's humbling. It is humbling. All the things you took for granted go out the window. I'm mildly incontinent now. You'll notice, if you saw me today, I'd keep going to the toilet. But I've had to accept it. So what the doctors taught me, be humble. What did my mum tell me when I was growing up? Be humble. What did Uriah Heep say? Be humble. My point being is, most of us don't know about being humble is. Being humble is when I saw Ian today, realizing no matter whether you're a drug addict, whether you're an alcoholic, whether you're transgender, you can't make judgments on that. So you have to be humble. And that's what I discovered about separation. But I also need to accept myself. And I realized that as much as I thought I accepted myself, I didn't. I was fine when I was in front of students, fine when I was in public, but in private, I couldn't accept myself. I was not happy with the way I was. So what started to happen is, I needed a rebirth. I was there at the birth of my son. And if you've ever seen a child born, it's hard. It's difficult. See this head come out. And I remember when the nurse gave me the scissors to cut the placenta, and I couldn't do it because I thought I'm going to hurt my child. I couldn't do it. But I realized I needed a rebirth, because I got to a point at the age of 60, I was no longer 40 or 50, I was 60. But you see, with rebirthing, you need a midwife, somebody to bring your hands to bring you into the world. I saw the talk this morning about how naturally you come into the world. But when you're going through a rebirth, it's a completely different process. So I recognized I needed to be a rebirth. That was part of my separation. Because birthing is a separated process. You go from inside the womb to coming out. So I needed to make a transition. And this is where it happened. One of my brethren who's sitting in the room right now, I'm not going to call him by his first name, he knows where he is, and you'll see me talking to him afterwards, so you can find out who he is. In the community, word got round that I got a prostate issue. So people came up to me and said, yo, Doc, you've been around for 40-odd years. We need a legacy from you. And I was saying, brethren, I'd given up, because I thought with the prostate issue, I can't do nothing. I'm finished, done. This person come to me and said, yo, Martin, we need something from you. I said, what? We need a legacy. We need you to come back. Then the clarity come. Because you know something? Like was said this morning, I've always been frightened of love and intimacy. My man gave me unconditional love like my mum. And then suddenly, at work, I'm working with staff members who are here today who come and give me love and say, Martin, we need you. And then people on the team who's organised TED Talks said, Martin, we'd like you to do this. And suddenly what I realised is I gained clarity. And part of the clarity was I was embracing love. Because when you think your life's coming to an end, money ain't going to save it. Status and profile ain't going to save it. What's going to save it is the people that embrace you when you're at your lowest. And I realized at the age of 60, I was low. So I found clarity by one thing. Because suddenly, people in the community, let me tell you, you know when they found out I got prostate, I had to go through the internal examination. And when I came to work after I'd had the first examination, I always remember, I got a lot of very liberal, Martin, we're really feeling it for you. Like they almost wanted my pain. In the community, though, it wasn't like that. In the community, it was simply like, yo, Martin, did the guy have long fingers? Did he have sharp fingernails? Did he smile when he did it? But you know something? What I realized is the one thing that helped me cope with the difficulty is the humor. And humor comes from a place of openness and honesty. So I found on the streets, they say, yo, Brethren, we're all dying. What makes you any different? What makes you think you're better? Because you got a PhD. I had somebody at work that said to me, how can you have a prostate problem? You got a doctorate. So I embraced the community. I went back. And so the people in the room started to repair me, rebuild me. But they said, Brethren, if you're going to come back to community, you got to walk the talk. You can't just chat. You got to do it. So suddenly, I'm walking the talk. And if you know anything about Inuit culture, when you walk in your father's footsteps, you're going to kill a polar bear. The child walks in those footsteps. So I had to retrace my steps back into the community. So I was walking in other people's footsteps now. I was no longer leading. I was actually following. And I remember Maya Angelou, the word legacy. To a lot of you, legacy is a long way off. When you give them bad news, like I got bad news, legacy is close. I've just become a great-grandparent. My great-grandson's about 6 months old, which means in 10 years' time, he'll probably be looking at this. Maybe I've passed away. But the issue is about legacy, which is about generativity. So I look at it, your legacy, every life you've touched. I've worked with thousands in prison. I've worked with thousands in the community. I'm still doing it. I get it from my mum. Yesterday when I left here, I spoke to one of my mum's friends I hadn't spoken to in 45 years. It was amazing to know that I've still got a link 45 years ago. So the issue about legacy brings me on to my final slide. This. The reason I put home, because I started out my life in an abusive situation, went through trauma, pain, hurt, loss, all of that stuff. And then 2 years ago, I got bad news. Rediscovered love, and then suddenly what I realized, that 1-year-old child, that's me at 1, 7, 9, 17, 30, me now. So I've come full circle. I've met myself again, because when my friend said, Martin, you got the body of a 60-year-old and the mind of a child. The one thing I've loved about this experience is kind of reminded me how excited I got today. When I saw that TEDx sign, I wanted to jump on it like a child. So what I'm dealing with is, I've come home. And coming home is coming home humble. I'm not walking home with my doctorate or my 40 years of experience or the books. I'm walking in with nothing. But by having, as my friend teaches me, Willard, who does the world's smallest sculptures, nothing's bigger than something small. Hello, yes, no, why, us, me, them. A Soundman Cunin, us, me, why, them. My point being is, I've come home, and I've been welcomed home, and they say, the African saying, it takes a whole village to raise a child. Suddenly the village has raised me again. So I've gone back to being a child, and I'm being raised again by the community. So listen, I'm glad you enjoyed walking with me. I'm off. I'll see you later on in the bar. Thank you.